funny thing about people, they spend their whole lives chasing, running after things they think will fill the emptiness. Money, success, love, power, whatever they can get their hands on. Like a starving man at a feast, grabbing everything in sight, stuffing his pockets, stuffing his mouth, but somehow still hungry, always hungry. Because no matter how much they get, it's never enough. The more they have, the more they want. Let's talk about the chase, the endless, exhausting, thrilling chase. People wake up every day, stretch their arms, rub their tired eyes, and jump right back onto the hamster wheel, chasing, running, grasping for something. Money, love, power, validation. Oh, validation, now that's a funny little drug, isn't it? People will do the most absurd things for just a little taste of approval, a pat on the back, a nod of acceptance from people who wouldn't even notice if they disappeared tomorrow. But that's the game, right? The world dangles the prize and you run after it, believing, oh, truly believing, that when you finally catch it, all the empty spaces inside you will be filled. You know the feeling, that gnawing, aching little void inside your chest that whispers to you at night. You drown it in noise and distractions, in everything and anything that makes you forget, even for a second, that something is missing. Because if you stop chasing, if you stop moving, you might just have to sit with it, stare at it. Admit that no matter how fast you run, the feeling never really goes away. And let's not forget how society plays along. The billboards, the movies, the commercials, they all tell you the same thing. Just one more thing, and you'll be happy. A new car, a better job, a bigger house, a prettier face. Just one more achievement, one more title, one more milestone, and you'll finally feel whole. But the joke's on you, because the second you get it, there's always something else. The finish line moves, the applause fades, and you're left standing there, clutching your prize, feeling emptier than ever. So what do? You chase again. Round and round it goes. The world keeps feeding you lies, and you keep swallowing them like candy, hoping that this time, it'll be different. But it never is. Oh, and the best part, the people who seem to have it all, the ones standing at the top of the world, flashing their perfect lives like trophies, they're just as lost as you are, maybe even more, because they got everything they were told would make them happy, and yet the emptiness never left. That's when the real panic sets in. That's when they start looking in the mirror and wondering if they were tricked, if they spent their whole life climbing a ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. That's when they start chasing distractions even harder, numbing the realization with substances, with more achievements, with anything that stops them from hearing that tiny voice in their head whispering, "Something's still missing, isn't it?" And what about the ones who don't have it all? The ones still stuck in the rat race, watching the lucky ones from below, thinking if I could just get there, I'd be happy. Oh, it's a funny little cycle, isn't it? The ones who have it aren't happy, and the ones who don't have it think they will be. It's all just a trick, a magic show, smoke and mirrors designed to keep you chasing shadows. But what happens when you stop? When you stop running, stop chasing, stop believing the lie that happiness is just one more achievement away? What happens when you stand still, let the noise fade, and finally face the truth? That nothing in this world, no amount of money, no level of success, no person, no possession will ever fill that void inside you. You see, the real joke is that people spend their whole lives searching for something that was never out there to begin with. They dig through piles of glittering distractions, hoping to find a diamond buried underneath, never realizing they were looking in the wrong place all along. But stopping is scary, isn't it? Because if you stop, you have to face yourself. You have to admit that maybe, just maybe, you've been running in the wrong direction this whole time. And nobody wants to admit they've been fooled. Nobody wants to admit they've wasted years chasing a dream that was never real. But that's the first step, the moment of clarity, the realization that if you want to stop feeling lost, you have to stop following the map the world gave you, because that map, it only leads to more chasing, more emptiness, more illusions, and the void inside you, it isn't going anywhere until you finally start looking in the right place. People, they cling to it like a security blanket, gripping it with white-knuckled desperation as if letting go means the world will swallow them whole. They plan, they strategize, they obsess over every detail, convinced that if they just do everything right, everything will go according to plan. It's adorable, really. The illusion of control, the belief that they are the masters of their fate, the captains of their souls, the architects of their own reality. But life has a funny little way of reminding them just how powerless they truly are. One moment, everything is smooth sailing, and the next, chaos. One phone call, one wrong step, one unexpected turn, and suddenly their perfect little world is crumbling beneath their feet. And that's when the panic sets in. That's when the fear creeps in like a slow-moving shadow, whispering that everything is spiraling out of control. And what do? They scramble, they fight. They try to put the pieces back together, desperate to regain the sense of order they thought they had. They make new plans, form new strategies, set new expectations, believing that if they just try a little harder, if they just hold on a little tighter, they can wrestle control back from the hands of fate. But the tighter they grip, the more it slips through their fingers like sand in a clenched fist. And when they finally realize they're losing the battle, that's when the real madness begins. The overthinking, the sleepless nights, the endless what-ifs playing in a loop inside their heads, tormenting them with visions of everything that could go wrong. They spiral, they suffocate, they drown in their own desperation to hold on to something that was never theirs to begin with. Oh, but the real tragedy, the ones who refuse to see it, the ones who convince themselves they still have control even as their world burns around them. They tell themselves it's just a rough patch, just a minor setback, just a test of their resilience. They refuse to surrender, refuse to accept that maybe, just maybe, they were never in control to begin with. And so they keep fighting, keep struggling, keep exhausting themselves in a battle. Because the truth is, control is an illusion, a comforting lie people tell themselves to keep the fear at bay. But deep down, they all know it. They know how fragile their plans are, how easily everything can fall apart. They just don't want to admit it. Because admitting it means accepting the unknown, and the unknown, that terrifies them more than anything. But what if, just what if, they let go? What if they stopped trying to control every little thing, stopped resisting the currents of life, stopped living in fear of what they cannot predict? But that would require trust, wouldn't it? And trust is a dangerous thing. It means surrendering. It means stepping into the darkness without knowing what's on the other side. It means accepting that maybe, just maybe, They were never supposed to be in control at all. And that is the scariest thing of all. Because people don't like the idea of surrender. They think it means weakness. They think it means giving up. But what if it doesn't? What if letting go isn't about losing, but about gaining something greater? What if the very thing they've been resisting is the very thing that could set them free? Oh, but that's the joke, isn't it? People are so afraid of losing control that they don't realize they never had it in the first place. They spend their whole lives fighting for something that was never really there, only to end up exhausted, broken, and lost. And all the while, the answer was right in front of them, the truth staring them in the face, waiting for them to see it. But will they? Or will they keep running in circles, desperately clinging to an illusion that was never real? Ah, that's the real question, isn't it? People like to believe they know what's best for them. They walk around with their little lists, their little plans, their 5-year goals, and their vision boards, thinking they've got it all figured out. They map out their futures like architects of some grand destiny, convinced that if they just do A, B, and C, they'll get X, Y, and Z. It's cute, really. The confidence, the certainty, the belief that they have the slightest clue about what's actually coming next. And then, of course, life happens. Plans shatter, expectations crumble, and suddenly they're left standing in the wreckage of everything they thought they wanted. The job falls through, the relationship collapses, the opportunity they were banking on slips through their fingers like smoke, and oh, how they panic. How they mourn the loss of their perfect little plans, as if the universe personally betrayed them. They shake their fists at the sky, demanding to know why things didn't go their way, why things had to change, why they weren't given exactly what they wanted, exactly when they wanted it. Oh, but the real joke? They don't even realize they were being set up for something better, something bigger, something they couldn't even begin to imagine. Because that's the thing about people. They think they know what they need, but they don't. Not really. They chase after what's familiar, what's safe, what makes sense to them in the moment. They cling to their comfort zones, terrified of uncertainty, terrified of anything that forces them into the unknown. And when the rug gets pulled out from under them, they see it as punishment instead of protection, as a curse instead of a blessing, as a failure instead of a redirection. They don't see what's happening behind the scenes. They don't see the doors that are about to open, the pieces that are being put into place, the opportunities that are waiting just around the corner. All they see is what they've lost, what was taken, what didn't go according to plan. They mourn the end of things that were never meant to last, completely blind to the fact that what's coming is so much greater than what they wanted to hold on to. But oh, the irony. If they had gotten what they wanted, if everything had gone according to their perfect little scripts, they would have missed out on something far better. They would have settled. They would have locked themselves into a life so much smaller than the one they were actually meant to have. But people don't like waiting. They don't like uncertainty. They don't like trusting in something they can't see. They want answers now. They want guarantees. They want to know exactly how things are going to work out before they're willing to take a step forward. And when they don't get that certainty, they spiral. They stress. They convince themselves that everything is falling apart, when in reality, everything is falling into place. Oh, and let's talk about the way they fight it. The way they beg for doors to reopen even as they're being slammed shut for a reason. The way they keep going back to situations that are clearly toxic, clearly not meant for them, just because they're afraid of stepping into the unknown. People would rather sit in the comfort of what's familiar, even if it's miserable, than take a leap into something better. They fear change more than they fear stagnation. And that's where they go wrong. Because sometimes the loss is the blessing. Sometimes the rejection is the protection. Sometimes the disappointment is just a disguise for something far greater that's waiting on the other side. But will they see it? Will they let go of their need for control long enough to realize that maybe? Or will they keep fighting, keep resisting, keep clinging to what's already slipping away, until they're left with nothing but regret? Now that's the real question. People walk around thinking they know who they are. They wake up, brush their teeth, go about their little routines, convinced they've got themselves all figured out. But put a little pressure on them, just a little shake, a little test, a little moment where things don't go their way, and suddenly that mask of self-assurance starts to crack. Who they thought they were, gone. What they thought they could handle, shattered. And what's left? Now that's the fun part. See, when everything's easy, anyone can pretend to be strong. Anyone can wear the mask of patience, of kindness, of wisdom. But the second things go wrong, the second life starts pressing in, squeezing them just a little too hard, that's when the truth comes out. That's when the nice ones snap. That's when the patient ones start screaming. That's when the wise ones start making foolish choices. It's almost funny. They spend their whole lives crafting this identity, this idea of who they are. And the moment things get difficult, all that effort goes right out the window. And oh, how they panic. How they scramble to get back to who they thought they were. How they try to glue the mask back together, to convince themselves they're still in control. They tell themselves it's just a phase, just a rough patch, just a moment of weakness. But deep down, deep down, they know the truth. They've seen what's underneath, and it terrifies them. They've seen the part of themselves they like to pretend doesn't exist. The part that doubts, that fears, that breaks under pressure, and they'd do anything to bury it again. But here's the thing, they're being tested for a reason, stripped down for a purpose, because sometimes you have to lose who you thought you were to become who you were actually meant to be. And that's the part nobody likes, the breaking, the undoing, the stripping away of everything they thought made them strong. People love the idea of transformation, of growth, of becoming something greater. But what they don't love is the process, the tearing down, the uncomfortable moments where they have to face parts of themselves they'd rather ignore. They don't realize that every test, every challenge, every moment of pressure is just shaping them into something more. They think they're losing themselves when really they're just shedding the parts that were never meant to last. But instead of embracing the process, they fight it. They resist. They scream about how unfair it is, how hard it is, how they just want things to go back to the way they were. They don't see that the way things were wasn't enough. That who they were wasn't enough, not for what's coming next, not for where they're meant to go. And that's the irony. The same people who beg for growth, for purpose, for something more, are the same ones who fight it the hardest when it actually starts happening. They want strength but don't want to be tested. They want wisdom but don't want to face hard lessons. They want to be unshakable but don't want to be shaken. They want the reward without the process, the power without the pain, the purpose without the preparation. But that's not how it works. You don't get to be more without first becoming less. You don't get to rise without first being torn apart. And if you think you can fight it, resist it, push against it, and still come out on the other side as the person you were meant to be, well, let's just say you've got another thing coming. And whether you like it or not, you're going to have to face what's underneath that mask. People think they're in control. They wake up, follow their little schedules, make their little plans, thinking they've got everything figured out. They hold on so tightly to their routines, their habits, their ideas of how life should go. Oh, they believe they're the ones pulling the strings. But what happens when things don't go according to plan? When something unexpected sneaks in and flips the whole script, that's when the real fun begins. See, people love certainty. They cling to it like a child clutching their favorite toy. It makes them feel safe, secure, like they know what's coming next. They map out their lives step by step, convinced that if they just work hard enough, if they just do everything right, then everything will fall under control exactly the way they imagined. But control? Oh, that's the biggest illusion of them all. Because no matter how tightly they grip the wheel, no matter how carefully they plan, there will always be something bigger, something unseen, something just waiting for the perfect moment to come along and knock the whole thing off course. And when it does, when their carefully built world starts crumbling around them, that's when you see what they're really made of. That's when you see just how fragile their sense of control really was. Some people break. They panic, they scream, they cry about how unfair it all is. They try desperately to hold on, to put the pieces back together exactly the way they were before. They can't accept that maybe, just maybe, things fell apart for a reason. That maybe they were never supposed to stay the same. They fight against it, exhausting themselves trying to regain control, never realizing that the more they struggle, the worse it gets. And then there are the ones who let go. The ones who understand that sometimes the best thing you can do is stop fighting, stop resisting, stop trying to force things to go back to the way they were. These people, they know something the others don't. They know that sometimes losing control is the best thing that can happen. Because only when you let go of what you thought should be do you make room for what's actually meant to be. But oh, letting go, it's terrifying, isn't it? Because people think if they're not in control, then everything will fall apart. They think if they don't have a grip on every little detail, then things will spiral into chaos. They don't realize that sometimes chaos is exactly what they need. That sometimes things have to fall apart so something better can be built in its place. And isn't that the funny part? They spend their whole lives trying to avoid uncertainty, trying to protect themselves from the unknown. But the unknown is where all the magic happens. It's where they grow, where they change, where they become something more than they ever thought possible. But most people, oh, they're too afraid. Too busy trying to hold on to something that was never meant to last. Too blind to see that the very thing they fear, the loss of control, is the one thing that could set them free. Because real power is not in holding on. It's in knowing when to let go. It's in trusting that even when things don't go according to plan, maybe, just maybe, they're still going exactly the way they're supposed to. But people don't like that idea, do they? They want guarantees, they want promises, they want to know how the story ends before they've even lived it. But that's not how this works. Life doesn't give out roadmaps. It doesn't hand you a script and tell you exactly what's coming next. No, it throws you into the unknown, tests you, breaks you, and forces you to either adapt or collapse. And the ones who make it, the ones who truly learn how to live, they're the ones who stop trying to control everything and start embracing the chaos. The ones who understand that sometimes the best thing you can do is let go and see where the madness takes you. People love to talk about fairness, about how things should be. They walk around with their heads high, convinced that life follows some neat little rule book, that if they do everything right, everything will go right. Oh, but life doesn't care about their rules. Life doesn't play fair. It doesn't hand out rewards just because you worked hard, just because you were patient, just because you followed the steps. No, no, no. Life plays its own game, and the rules, well, they change whenever it feels like it. See, people spend so much time waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for the right opportunity, waiting for a sign, for a break, for something, anything that tells them they're on the right path. They sit there day after day, convincing themselves that if they just wait long enough, everything will fall into place exactly the way they want it to. But waiting? Oh, that's the biggest joke of all. Because while they sit around hoping for a miracle, life is moving, time is passing, and the only thing they're really doing is letting it all slip right through their fingers. And when things don't go their way, what do? Oh, they complain. They cry about how unfair it all is. They look around and see others getting what they wanted, others finding success, finding happiness, finding purpose, and they grit their teeth and ask, why not me? They convince themselves they've been forgotten, that they've been left behind, that no one is listening. But maybe, just maybe, they're asking the wrong question. Maybe it's not about why things aren't happening for them. Maybe it's about why they're still waiting instead of doing something about it. Because here's the truth. The cold, hard truth that no one likes to admit. No one is coming to save them. No one is going to hold their hand and guide them to where they need to be. No one is going to make the decision for them. They keep waiting for a sign, waiting for permission, waiting for someone to tell them it's their time, but the only person who can do that is them. The only thing standing between them and what they want, it's not luck, it's not fate. It's not some grand cosmic force deciding their worth. No, it's them, just them. But oh, people don't like that answer, because if it's up to them, then that means they have to take responsibility. That means they have to face the truth. That maybe, just maybe, the reason nothing is happening is because they're too afraid to make a move. Too scared to take a risk, too comfortable in their own misery because at least that's familiar, at least that doesn't require change. And change? Oh, that's the scariest thing of all, isn't it? Because change means stepping into the unknown. It means letting go of the excuses, the doubts, the idea that everything has to be perfect before they begin. It means facing the reality that the only way forward is to take a step, even if they don't know where it will lead. But most people, they'd rather stay where they are. They'd rather keep waiting, keep blaming, keep pretending that they have no control, because as long as they believe that, they don't have to do anything. They don't have to try. And if they don't try, they don't have to fail. That's where the real lessons are. That's where the real growth happens. Not in the waiting, not in the wishing, but in the falling and the getting back up. In the trying and the learning and the adapting, in the moments where they realize that maybe the path they thought was right wasn't right at all. But that doesn't mean they stop walking. It just means they find a new way forward. But people don't want a new way. They want their way. They want things to go exactly as they imagined, in the exact timing they expected. And when it doesn't, oh, they crumble. They give up. They convince themselves that if it didn't happen the way they planned, then it wasn't meant to happen at all. But that's not how life works. Life isn't a straight line. It's not a neat little staircase where every step leads perfectly to the next. No, life is messy, it's unpredictable, it throws detours and roadblocks and storms that wipe everything away in an instant. And that's the fun part. Because the ones who make it through, the ones who find their way even when everything falls apart, they aren't the ones who had it easy. They're the ones who learned how to keep moving, no matter what. They're the ones who stopped waiting for a sign and decided to create their own. They're the ones who understood that life doesn't owe them anything, that nothing is guaranteed, but that doesn't mean they stop fighting for it, because in the end, the only difference between the people who succeed and the people who don't, it's not talent, it's not luck, it's not some divine favor choosing one over the other. It's simply this: one of them kept going and the other one didn't.